I'm really worried, you guys. Without the druid and wizard, this session is gonna be really hard.
Yeah, no kidding. This is gonna suck.
Hey, Dungeon Master, you think you could do something about this?
Yeah, sure. Have an intern and a commoner to help you out.
Greetings, heroes.
Hi everyone, I'm back. Ready to further our corporate objectives, which were always spoken of, but never documented, so we can never actually see what they are.
That's because we're always changing them, and we have no true unified vision for the next year or two.
That's right. We also like to keep them vague and generic, so they can apply to pretty much any situation.
You know, what they're saying is true. I've worked at several corporations over my long and lengthy career, and in general, a corporation...
Hey, listen, old man. You're new here, so just shut up and let the pros do the talking.
Yeah, that's right. You're just a temp.
Welcome to the DM Lair. I'm Lucar, and I've been a Dungeon Master since high school. On this channel, I give practical Dungeon Master advice that you can implement at your game table. Today in the Lair, I'm going to discuss how to adjust your Dungeons & Dragons game for any number of players. You see, the game is generally balanced around 4 players, so if you have a group smaller or larger than that, then there really are some things you should consider doing to account for that. This is especially important if you're running a module, because if you pick up Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage, for instance, but have 8 players in your group, you're probably going to need to adjust a few things. And the converse, if you only have 2 players, is also true. Oh, and by the way, toward the end of this video, after I give you some guidelines on how to adjust the game, I'm going to show you how to use an online encounter calculator to rebalance encounters when you have more or fewer PCs. Super easy and super fast. Now, if you have any questions about this topic or others, please swing by one of my live streams and ask me. I stream every Friday here on YouTube and every Monday and Wednesday over on Twitch, starting around 6 p.m. Eastern US time. And before we jump in, I want to thank all of my generous patrons and channel members for supporting the channel and helping make this content possible. In particular, huge shout out to The Pale Rider, Alpha the Wolf, Charlie B, Cecil H, Simone C, Rick Baker, One Leg Hendo, and David R. Thank you for being awesome. Okay, now let us discuss the problems of scaling, of which there are 2. Number 1, action economy. In short, action economy is a measure of how many times the good guys get to do something to how many times the bad guys do. For instance, if there are 4 players and they each can attack once, their action economy is 4. But if you have 8 bad guys and they can each attack once, then their action economy is 8. And 8 being higher than 4, we would say that the bad guys have better action economy in this scenario. And the way D&D combat works, and possibly other RPG combat systems, is that the tide of battle generally favors whichever side has better action economy. So when your group of 3 characters goes against a mob of 12 kobolds, all of the math calculations and the Dungeon Master Guide for balancing encounters kind of start to break down. I don't care that the calculations try to account for number of monsters. They still break down. So part of adjusting a game for any number of players involves addressing the action economy situation.
Holy crap! That's a lot of kobolds! We're screwed!
Not necessarily. Hey, Gary, do you think you could talk to them for us?
No, I'm sorry. That's not on my character sheet. And the union strictly prohibits me from doing anything not written here.
Oh, come on, Gary. The rogue has been stealing your union dues anyway.
Number 2, missing abilities or roles. Now, this problem of scaling generally only applies to smaller groups because it's in smaller groups that you may not have a rogue or a cleric or a frontline melee type or a utility caster. And when you can't pick locks, disarm traps, heal, keep the baddies off the archers and wizards, or cast those super useful spells that make the heroes' lives so much easier, well, bad things can happen. Because the fact of the matter is, when you only have, say, 3 players, you're going to be missing some of those roles and their super useful abilities. Adjusting for large groups. Alrighty then, let's talk about large groups first, because first, I feel like they might be the most problematic to adjust the game for, and second, I get far more people asking me how to deal with large groups of players than with smaller groups. So let's just tackle the giant first. Step 1 is to deal with the crazy action economy that a large group of characters has. And the main solution to this is not too complicated. You just need to have more bad guys. A decent rule of thumb is to have roughly as many bad guys in a fight as there are good guys. Now, that's a rule of thumb. You still gotta punch the numbers through a challenge rating calculator to make sure you're in the ballpark. Don't go out and grab 7 ancient red dragons for your group of 7 level 5 players because Luke said so. Like, that's not what I'm saying. Like why would you do that? Next, for boss battles, listen very carefully. Your days of plopping one boss all alone in a room for your big old group of players to fight are over. Your bosses need minions and lots of them. This will help balance out action economy. But Luke, you may say, many bosses have legendary actions. But random person on the internet, I might respond, that's not enough. Minions round things out nicely, trust me. Oh, and if you want some killer tips on making awesome boss battles for your players, after this video is over, check out 2 of my other videos, how to make the perfect boss fight, parts 1 and 2, links down in the description. Okay, so what about large groups that are missing roles, like a healer or rogue? Tough luck. I mean, dude, they have no excuse. If the group is missing a critical role, it's because they chose not to fill that, and that's on them. I wouldn't do anything. I would let the players deal with that situation and figure it out on their own. But honestly, these are all mechanical things for running a large group of players that the Dungeon Master can adjust prior to the game. Once you know how to do them, they're not that hard. However, there is something else that is considerably harder with a large group.
Holy crap! This game is so slow!
Yeah, no kidding. I spend most of my time waiting for the other players to finish their turns.
Yeah, this is boring. I know I'm just an intern, but I'd like to get to play the game at some point here.
I know. We can kill the old man. He's long-winded anyway.
Yeah! Great idea!
I agree. He's just a commoner anyway.
Whether it's in combat or out of combat, players in large groups are going to spend lots of time sitting around and not doing nothing because they're waiting for their turn to do something. Not doing nothing because they're waiting for their... You get it. They're going to spend a lot of time waiting around because there are lots of people at the table. This can easily cause them to be bored out of their minds, and there are a few basic solutions to this. First, pick up the pace of the game. Don't let combats take forever, and out of combat, limit the amount of time any one player can dominate the table. Make sure you spread the love around and allow all players to participate and keep things moving. Second, split your big huge group into 2 and run 2 D&D games, or prune the number of players from your group and stop saying yes to everyone who wants to join. Saying no to having too many players is doing your current players a service by protecting the quality of the game for them. It takes an amazing dungeon master to run a game for a large group of players and keep it fun and interesting for everyone. But what often happens is players get bored, leave, and look for different games. I don't know if it's often, but it can definitely happen. I mean, I've heard of it happening, so just, yeah, take that for what you will. By the way, if you're looking for ways to speed combats up in your games, whether for big groups or small, check out my video, Faster Combat in D&D. It's an older video, so pardon the cringe, but the advice is still good. Link in the description. Adjusting for small groups. Now, for smaller groups, part of adjusting the difficulty of the encounters is accounting for action economy as well, and our rule of thumb still applies. Have roughly the same number of monsters as there are characters. And for small groups, single boss fights can work very well without the use of minions. However, what you're definitely going to run into with smaller groups is that they will almost assuredly be having missing roles. And that was just some horrible English right there. They will be missing roles. No healer, no rogue, etc. And there are 3 ways to adjust for this. First, give your players some allies, NPCs, hirelings, that sort of thing. See my video, Pro Tips for Hirelings, Followers, NPCs, and DMPCs for some pointers on that. Second, let your players run more than one PC if they want to. And third, make things easier. Make the DCs for picking locks or disarming traps lower. Have traps do less damage. Make healing potions easier to come by, and even allow characters to drink them with bonus actions instead of standard actions. How to recalculate encounters for large and small groups. Let's say you're running your level 8 players through twisted caverns of Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Now in Area 10, the Drider layer, the module calls for 2 Driders and 5 giant spiders. However, you know that your group of 8 players is just going to trash that encounter. Now you can see here that that encounter is intended to be deadly for 4 level 8 PCs. But when we recalculate it for 8 level 8 PCs, it is now only hard. If you want to make it deadly again, you can punch up the number of Driders and giant spiders some. If we make it 4 Driders and 6 giant spiders, you can see that the difficulty is once again deadly, and we're good to go. You can use this calculator to rebalance for fewer players, and you can even use it to rebalance an entire adventure for groups at a higher or lower level. I'll drop a link to this online tool down in the description for you. Don't forget to follow me over on Twitch for some chill live streams where we hang out, talk D&D, and even paint minis together. Next week, I'll discuss some tips for running D&D modules and pre-made adventures. But until then, click right here to learn how to adjust the difficulty of an encounter on the fly during combat. And until next time, let's play D&D.